It's Wednesday, February 25th. This is CTV at 6. Here's what's making news tonight. Swift reaction to spending cuts targeting everything from jobs to museums to education. Maritime vacationers make it home from Mexico with stories to tell.
On the cloudier side tomorrow, but sunnier conditions for Friday and the start of the weekend.
Live from our Maritimes News Center, this is CTV News at 6. Here is Todd Battis.
Good evening. Reaction to Nova Scotia's deficit budget has been swift and vocal. A protest outside Province House decried moves the Houston government is making to reduce spending. Cuts hit a wide swath of people and programs. CTV's Jesse Thomas begins our coverage.
Dozens of protesters lined the snow-covered street outside the Nova Scotia legislature to protest the more than 900 job cuts and slashing of $130 million in social spending by the PC government. Many of the cuts were felt in the community's culture and tourism sector.
We lost our jobs for tourism at the airport.
Louise Salisbury has never protested before, but she and Eleanor Leadbeater were today. They were laid off last week when the province closed several visitor information centers, like theirs at the Halifax airport.
And we were called to a meeting, and we were just told that our jobs were gone immediately. We had to gather our stuff, get right out of the airport.
It was a shock. Salisbury said she ran into Premier Tim Houston in the airport just days before her layoff.
He asked me how tourism was going, and I said, great. And he said, keep up the good work.
Inside the legislature, Houston was grilled on the rationale for the cuts.
I didn't run for office to cut things and take things away.
Yesterday, the province released a list of those impacted by the $130 million in social spending cuts.
We're trying to focus the efficiencies, the cuts, the change, whatever you want to call them, on administration and management to protect frontline services, to protect healthcare, to protect education, to protect housing.
The cuts to jobs and social spending will save the government $304 million this year, but opposition says the list is long and many are still trying to make sense of the impact.
And these are really important to the fabric of Nova Scotia. We've had reviews in the past that saw value in keeping these programs.
As the Houston government looks to bring some balance back to the shaky fiscal situation, the cuts to government spending will continue over the next 4 years as government plans to cut $623 million in spending from next year's budget. Jesse Thomas, CTV News, Halifax.
And today, Nova Scotia announced it's ramping up efforts to shut down cannabis outlets not run by the province. New legislation introduced goes after landlords and advertising of illegal cannabis. Justice Minister Scott Armstrong introduced several amendments to the Cannabis Control Act, expanding peace officers like provincial conservation officers to enforce the law. Fines jump from $5,000 to $25,000 for landlords who rent space to non-provincial cannabis stores. The province intends to go after shops with signage promoting what it deems to be illegal cannabis. The province maintains the crackdown is about public safety.
So we're not just talking about large illegal dispensaries here. We're talking about a fine system where law enforcement will be able to shut down illegal dispensaries, but also local drug dealers as well.
Cannabis sales at the NSLC last year topped $127 million. That brought in roughly $19 million in tax revenue. The government doesn't know how much is lost to black market sales. New Brunswickers will find out in 2 weeks how the province plans to wrestle down its billion-dollar deficit. The Susan Holt government asked citizens for suggestions. Whether they'll have an impact is another matter. Here's CTV's Laura Brown.
More than 7,300 New Brunswickers voiced their opinions during the province's pre-budget consultations, and at least some of them came from the heritage sector, where people are nervous about what the Susan Holt government will decide come budget day.
Every day is a pressure cooker.
This museum director says the Save Our Museums campaign will continue even after budget day. News that Nova Scotia will be closing several museums doesn't sit well.
We all feel a little insulted. a Canadian Museum Association, that they've picked up on the story and are deeply concerned. The National Trust has been in touch with us about concerns that they've got about what's happening here in our province.
Some community schools with fewer than 100 students have been concerned too, but Holt told reporters those schools need to undergo a review every few years. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be closed.
We are being careful with every dollar, and we are double checking and triple checking every dollar we spend so that New Brunswickers can know that this government is making those careful decisions.
But their focus shouldn't only be on cuts, says this author and expert on Canadian governance.
That's important. It needs to be done. If you have a structural deficit, you need to look at it. But in my view, you need to do more than that. You need to know how to grow the economy better.
He believes New Brunswick won't get out of the red without making more money.
And I think the days of easy transfer payments from Ottawa will be slowing down. Why? Because Ottawa has its own fiscal problem. And secondly, the richer provinces are starting to ask questions. Why do we transfer payments to provinces that say no to economic growth while we have to say yes?
New Brunswick's budget will be tabled March 17th. Laura Brown, CTV News, Fredericton.
We have more budget reaction later in the show, but first to Moncton Court, where both the prosecution and defense presented closing arguments to the jury in the Jansen Baker double murder trial today. As CTV's Derek Haggett reports, it made for an eventful day.
Defense attorney Brian Monroe told the jury in the Jansen Baker double murder trial the end was near, but they've been making one of the biggest decisions of their lives in the coming days. It's going to stick with you, he said. Monroe told the jury Bernard and Rosemarie Saunier were brutally murdered in an execution-style hit that the accused is not capable of. It takes a certain kind of evil monster to do this. Mr. Baker is not an evil monster, he said. Baker is charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of the Sauniers, who were both shot in the head inside their Dieppe home on September 7, 2019. Much of Monroe's summation revolved around the lack of forensic evidence against Baker. Where's the proof that he was in that house that night, he said. You won't find it. Monroe thanked the jury, saying, this is a pressurized environment. It is not a movie set. It is not a TV show. The Crown began their closing statements by saying there's no doubt Baker is the killer. Prosecutor Brad Burgess went over the details of the murders and once again showed the jury crime scene photos. Imagine being there in the middle of the night seeing Mr. Baker, Burgess said. Imagine how terrifying that would have been. Burgess questioned Baker's alibi and wondered why he didn't bring it up before testifying in his defense last week. Justice Cameron Gunn will give the jury their final instructions tomorrow, and then deliberations will begin. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Moncton.
Online, RCMP in Nova Scotia have arrested a 39-year-old East Chesapeake man for mischief in connection to an investigation of a hate incident at a minor hockey game. And we have the details now at ctvnewsatlantic.ca. It's been months since 6-year-old Lily and now 5-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing from their Pictou County home. Today, their grandmother told CTV's Hafsa Arif why she's going to court to get legal guardianship of those siblings.
And what people notice most is the silence, especially from Belinda Gray.
I'm anxious for spring. I'm anxious for more searches.
Gray is the grandmother of 6-year-old Lily and Jack Sullivan, who would now be 5. They were reported missing May 2nd. Their last confirmed sighting was the day before. Gray is now going to court. She's seeking guardianship and has launched a campaign to cover court costs.
If things don't go the way we're hoping, I want to be the voice and the person that lays them to rest with love.
She says the guardianship will also allow her to access documents she currently cannot, including reports from Child Protective Services and records from the children's school.
That was my main reason for wanting to start this.
Police say this remains a missing persons investigation and continue to follow up on tips, but aren't releasing further details.
I don't doubt the RCMP are doing all they can, but until they get a break, they're not going to be able to do anything.
Meanwhile, the children's stepfather, Daniel Martel, faces unrelated charges. He's due back in court on March 2nd. But right now, all the community has on their minds is Jack and Lily.
People's biggest want, I think, is just to know what happened.
As for the months ahead, it won't be easy for Gray. She plans on returning to the search for Lily and Jack. Hafsa Arif, CTV News, Halifax.
Flights are now moving from Mexico, bringing home Maritimers after many witnessed violence that occurred there. Still others are trying to get back, while some can't decide whether to head down. CTV's Vanessa Wright spoke with some of them.
Aaron Murnahan is happy to be back on Canadian soil. That's after a scary end to his trip to Puerto Vallarta.
The first 3/4 of the trip went perfectly to plan. You know, it was a very peaceful town. There was a lot of tourists around. There was a lot of lively activity. We went out on the town Saturday night, stayed out quite late, and when we woke up the next morning, it was to the sound of gunshots and cars exploding.
His original flight back to Halifax this morning wasn't affected. They were just one of many tense travelers after violence and unrest across Mexico ensued following the death of a drug cartel leader. But others haven't been so lucky.
The cost of the hotel room for me tonight will be $400 US plus. And the option is to try to go and find a cheaper place and go out there, and I don't know what's safe and where it's safe.
Michelle Connerty and her family traveled from Vancouver to Puerto Vallarta on the 15th. She says WestJet canceled their returning flight, telling her to stand by for the next one. That was 3 days ago.
Every person I talk to gives me a different story. There's no cohesiveness to this. There's obviously no plan.
CTV News reached out to WestJet about the Connerty situation, and following that conversation late today, the family was booked on a flight back home tomorrow night. Travel agent Miranda Miller says Mexico will always be popular with Maritimers.
It is nice to be seeing, though, that the tour operators did allow some flexibility in rebooking and reprotection, and now that things are starting to quiet down in Mexico, everybody is getting on their way home or will soon be home, and then getting ready for their next travel plans.
I do have some friends that are still stuck down there in limbo waiting to see when they'll be able to fly out, so I'll certainly be checking in with them. But when I was at the airport yesterday in Puerto Vallarta, there were a number of folks from Halifax there all waiting to get on flights. So it seems like people are starting to leave.
Vanessa Wright, CTV News, Halifax.
And there is a live look at Digby Harbour, where it's currently -1. Let's bring in CTV meteorologist Kayla Mitchell for our first look at the forecast.
Yeah, and temperatures at this hour for much of the Maritimes are sitting between around -4 and 0. A little bit colder than that through some northern and western areas of New Brunswick, where it's currently between -4 and -7. I didn't see much there on that webcam from Digby, but there is some light snow that's making its way across the region as well. Winds right now are mostly out of the south, and they're being sustained between 10 and 20 kilometers per hour. There's not much in the way of wind gusts, so a few areas are reporting a few peak gusts between 30 and 40. The wind direction will be changing for tomorrow, and the winds tomorrow afternoon are going to be a little bit more blustery compared to today. Here's a look at that light snow making its way across the region on radar. So this is being reported now around central areas of Nova Scotia, including the Halifax airport, as well as locations in New Brunswick. And in general, this band of snow is going to continue to make its way west to east across the Maritimes as we make our way through this evening and night. It may even mix in with a little bit of rain around the Atlantic coastline of Nova Scotia. This is coming in with a much weaker low pressure system and a couple of weather fronts with it that's making its way up and out of the northeastern United States. So how much snow can we pick up from this? In most cases for the Maritimes, it's going to be about another 1 to 5 centimeters of snow. So much lower snowfall potential, of course, than the big nor'easter that we had move through at the start of this week. There may be some pockets of snow as high as, say, the 5 to 10 centimeter range. That looks most likely, though, at only happening at locations at higher terrain and away from the coast. Remember, though, it doesn't take all that much snow down on some surfaces to make for some slippery conditions. We do have a chance of flurries in the forecast for tomorrow, Todd, but then expecting a sunny end to the week for most of the Maritimes. And I'll have the details of that coming up a little bit later on.
1 to 5 centimeters, barely worth getting the shovel out.
Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Maybe the broom. Okay, we'll see you later in the show. The decades-long fight over what to do with the New Brunswick exhibition grounds in Fredericton could still reach a mutual agreement. That's according to both sides in the fight. City Hall and MBX officials made arguments to the province in a hearing last week. The city says the land is badly needed for a new school and housing. The provincial exhibition says the land was originally gifted to the city under the condition it be used for agricultural purposes. A proposal sent from the X to the city was rejected just before the hearing.
We are very enthusiastic about a school and the opportunity that that would present. And we don't turn down the housing issue either. Our argument is more along the lines of why all of it at the same time, knowing that development will take stages to carry out.
In September, Fredericton City Council voted to expropriate the land. Fredericton City Hall says it will continue to hold negotiations with MBX officials as the process continues. A decision is expected by May. Education took a hit in Monday's Nova Scotia budget. Cuts are coming to early childhood education right up to university funding. And experts say students are going to feel it. Here's CTV's Jonathan McGuinness.
Major cuts are coming to education in Nova Scotia.
Anytime you're making cuts like this, it's tough.
Tens of millions of dollars is being held back, including funds for universities, scholarships, arts programs, and supports for early childhood education.
It is going to impact kids academically. So some kids only have access to these sorts of things at school. I feel like the kids who are most vulnerable will be most impacted by these cuts.
Cuts are also coming to some African Nova Scotian programming.
So in general, we're seeing an impact on all of our sister organizations and ourselves. And as we have a collective approach to doing things, I just want to amplify for people how significant that is in terms of negative impact in terms of our communities.
The cost-saving measures by the province are a response to its $1.2 billion deficit. Still, Sylvia Paris-Drummond says the timing of the cuts is insulting.
I feel very hurt that this is happening during African Heritage Month. I feel it very deeply. I'm sure other community folks do as well.
Education Minister Brendan Maguire says not all funds are being withheld.
When it comes to our African Nova Scotian and African Canadian community, we still have a whole host of supports in the department to the tune of $4.5 million.
University students are planning to voice their opposition to these cuts. The Canadian Federation of Students is planning a strike vote in the coming weeks. If the support is there, a province-wide strike will be held the week of March 15th. Jonathan McGuinness, CTV News, Halifax.
St. John libraries are seeking more funding, not for books or programs, for security. Branches have experienced a rise in violence. One location was even closed for a while. CTV's Avery McRae reports on what could be done about it.
In the Maritimes, libraries are known for being quiet, welcoming spaces. But in St. John, things aren't as quiet as they used to be.
We had 179 incidents just in the last year, 44 of which really required outside help.
And that's just at the branch inside Market Square. All three St. John locations have seen a rise in serious incidents recently. The Board of Trustees wants something done about it. They've written to council looking for funding for security.
They can range from verbal abuse to not necessarily violent behavior, but behavior that would be against some of our policies at the library.
When you get people screaming and hollering and acting up in the washrooms, it becomes not a free public library.
Neither Joanne McGuinness nor Councillor Jerry Lowe would go into specific details about the incidents or say if one sole group is responsible. One recent issue at the East Side branch here was so bad, it resulted in the library being closed for a few days. The Uptown branch does have some security, which is paid for by the city, but in the letter to council, it states they can no longer meet the demands of what is happening, saying the commissionaires are not required to enter public washrooms where some of the serious incidents with weapons have occurred, and are not able to intervene in ways that meaningfully deter or de-escalate any volatile situations. Councillor Lowe supports the idea of more security, but who will pay is the question as the province manages libraries.
It's got to be done sooner than later, because the problem is, as long as it's cold out, people are going to head into the libraries.
The matter has been referred to the city's CAO, who will further investigate the claims. Avery McRae, CTV News, St. John.
Get the Maritime's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
The Olympics are over and it's game on for the NHL, which is about to resume play, but Sidney Crosby remains sidelined by injury. The Cole Harbour native and Pittsburgh Penguins captain will miss at least 4 more weeks of play after suffering a lower body injury during Canada's quarterfinal win over Czechia.
Obviously, I want to be back out there as soon as possible, so just have to figure out, what that looks like, how long it's going to be, and find a way to make sure that I'm at my best when I come back.
The injury is a major hit to the Penguins' playoff push as the team heads into the crucial final stretch of the regular season. Time for us to step aside for a moment. As your local newscast rolls on, we'll get details of some light snow on the weather horizon. But first, some Nova Scotia museums seem to be history.
I don't think it's fair that rural communities are having to sacrifice their culture.
And some communities are pondering the future as cuts close their connections with the past. We'll explain next. One of the targets of spending cuts are grants that fund several Nova Scotia museums. There's concern closures will hurt tourism and the fabric of rural communities. Today, CTV's Callum Smith was in Liverpool to hear what might be lost.
I see a lot of happy memories.
The cuts deeper than first thought. The province now saying 12 rural museums will close as it grapples with a $1.2 billion deficit. Among those victim of the budget, the Perkins House Museum in Liverpool, where Brett Weafer looks back at 4 years working as a summer student.
I don't think it's fair that rural communities are having to sacrifice their culture and their economy and their tourism for a budget that was not balanced.
Weafer says centuries of history and diaries from Simeon Perkins are part of what's taught here.
To lose that house, you lose a lot of the history. It will impact a lot of businesses, I feel, in town because they'll lose out on the tourism that Perkins House draws in.
But now this sign will remain and won't flip to open in the summer. The province says closing 12 of its 28 museums will save $980,000 annually, but repairs and maintenance drive up costs even further.
What we're seeing right now is a government that is increasing the debt at an extreme pace. If you want to keep these museums open, you have to deal with the debt problem because the debt interest that is rising to $1 billion this year is crowding out the ability to fund other programs.
The government says visitation at the 12 museums was low, with some only seeing 1,000 people per year.
This is devastating and heartbreaking as well for those communities.
No solace to the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia, knowing it would be a tough budget, but wasn't expecting cuts this deep.
Oftentimes, these museums in smaller communities are where people really begin to learn about their history and culture, whether it's a school trip or, just something to do with their family. And going into them, you get a whole different experience than what you get from reading a book.
The province vows to explore options for these buildings' futures with local communities, but the Heritage Trust worries their condition will only worsen. Callum Smith, CTV News, Liverpool, Nova Scotia.
In tonight's CTV web poll, we're asking, how do you feel about government making cuts to museums to save money? Your options are, I agree with it. We need to make cuts somewhere. I disagree with it. Museums are crucial to preserve culture. Or, I don't like it, but I understand it. Take your pick at ctvnewsatlantic.ca. Still to come in your newscast, scattered flurries for the Maritimes tomorrow. Kaylin has a midweek look at the forecast on the other side. Daryl Reeves is our captain and pilot in the good ship CTV Atlantic helicopter that flies over Cape Breton. Well, perhaps not, but he is an expert at using the drone, and he sent us these pictures of a winter day over Corbett's Cove. That's in St. Peter's.
Yeah, that's really nice.
It's gorgeous, isn't it? Look at that blue sky.
Lots of snow cover on the ground, of course, because the nor'easter that just made its way through. Of course, we do have some cloud cover that's increasing this evening, and a little bit of light snow expected in Cape Breton as we make our way through tonight. But in most cases, it shouldn't be much more than the range of around 1 to 5 centimeters of snow.
Good.
So let's take a look at what's going on across the country, and then we'll go back to our forecast here in the Maritimes. Right now, pretty mild. Vancouver, Victoria sitting at 9 degrees, and temperatures have moderated a fair bit as well for parts of the prairies. Remember, we were looking at them last week. It was quite cold. Now 3 degrees at Edmonton, 7 at Calgary, Saskatoon sitting at 1. Some of the cold air still holding on in Manitoba. Winnipeg right now sitting at -13 and Thompson's at -18. Up north right now, some snow being reported at Whitehorse, -13, and snow at Yellowknife at -18. Much, much colder at Iqaluit, partly cloudy there and sitting at -29. In the southwest of Ontario, winds are sitting at 2 degrees and then gets colder moving up towards Ottawa and Montreal, both at around -5, -7 at Quebec City. Up in Labrador right now, it's -10 at Labrador City and Happy Valley, Goose Bay. And St. John's sitting at -2 as they continue with their snow cleanup. They had an incredibly snowy month of February. And then here in the Maritimes right now, -3 at Fredericton, -4 at Charlottetown, and -2 at Halifax. We talked about this earlier, but we do have this round of light snow. It's going to continue to make its way west to east across the Maritimes as we make our way through this evening and tonight. Again, for some parts of the Atlantic coastline of Nova Scotia, at the very end of it, it may mix with or turn over to a little bit of light rain. That band of snow will be clearing Prince Edward Island and Cape Breton in the early morning hours of Thursday. And in behind it for the start of the day for tomorrow. Pretty cloudy conditions for all 3 maritime provinces. Some pretty widespread flurries first thing in the morning for New Brunswick, and a chance of flurries in the southwest of Nova Scotia. Now for the afternoon, the cloud cover breaks up a little bit. So expecting some sunny breaks, and there's still going to be a chance of flurries around the Maritimes, but at that point in time, the coverage of those flurries is going to be widely scattered. So for any given community, it's only about a 30 or 40% chance. The winds, though, are going to be a little bit blustery for Thursday afternoon. Let's take a look at that. So first of all, the winds for this evening and tonight are mostly out at the south. They're not particularly strong, but then tomorrow's winds, as we get behind this front, become westerly, and the gusts pick up a little bit for the afternoon. They'll be peaking in the Maritimes between 30 and 50 kilometers per hour, so not particularly strong winds by our standards, but it will be noticeable out there. I'll call it a blustery day. Low temperatures in the forecast for tonight for most of the region will be falling at least a few degrees below the freezing mark. There will be some colder temperatures than that for northern areas of New Brunswick, where some communities will fall between around -7 and -11. High temperatures in the forecast for tomorrow, though, they're on the milder side for a number of communities in the Maritimes. A little bit chilly in the northwest of New Brunswick, 0 at Edmundston, -1 at Grand Falls, but up to around +2 for Bathurst and 4 degrees for Miramichi. Also getting up to 3 for Fredericton tomorrow, 2 for St. John, and 3 degrees for Moncton in the southeast. Here's a look at the high temperatures on Thursday for Prince Edward Island. That includes 4 at O'Leary, 3 at Summerside and Charlottetown, then 4 at St. Peter's Bay and Montague. In Cape Breton tomorrow, the high temperatures will be near 5 degrees for Sydney and 6 for Badek. On the south shore, on the north shore of Nova Scotia, closer to 5 degrees. And on the eastern shore, the high temperatures between 3 and 5 degrees. 4 for Amherst, 4 for Truro, 5 degrees for the city centres Halifax and Dartmouth, as well as Chester and Lunenburg. Continuing down the south shore, could be 6 for Bridgewater, 5 for Shelburne, and then 4 for Yarmouth, the Annapolis Valley for tomorrow. Most communities, including Middleton and Kentville-Wolfville area, with high temperatures near 4 degrees. Taking a look at the 7-day forecast, though, we do have some colder nights ahead. So colder temperatures returning to New Brunswick Thursday night as well as Friday night. Temperatures not too bad on Saturday with a mix of sun and cloud, but does get colder Sunday into Monday of next week. Of course, that is heading into the start of March. So a little bit of cold snap there to get next month started. Sunshine for Tuesday, snow possible on Wednesday of next week. For Nova Scotia, in the outlook, it's a mix of sun and cloud through Friday and Saturday. Some flurries in the forecast for Sunday, and then that little snap of colder air arriving Sunday night, and it's around for Monday of next week. High temperatures Monday and Tuesday look like they could be several degrees below the freezing mark, even for Nova Scotia. A mixture of snow and rain possible on Wednesday. And for Prince Edward Island, the forecast, sunshine for Friday, a mix of sun and cloud on Saturday. We've got some flurries in the forecast for Sunday, followed by that snap of colder air moving into place for the start of next week. A mixture of snow and rain possible on Wednesday, Todd.
Kaylin, I take it from the way you sold it that those night temperatures, those lows, are a little unseasonable.
Yeah, a few of them, especially coming up at the end of the weekend and Monday night. Those temperatures for early March, below average for that time of the year.
Okay, maybe it's just that little bit, right? That little snap.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll talk to you at the end of the show. Next, we're going to talk about how maritime exporters are navigating the latest turns in the tariff road. We'll be right back.
Okay, so we're back at it, the Virgin Radio Vault. Your chance to win What's Inside. Get that clue starting at 6:10 tomorrow morning.
And then about 7:30, join us for your chance at a $100 Bikini Village gift card. Good luck.
Welcome back. U.S. President Donald Trump spoke of tariffs, but it was lost in the general mayhem of last night's State of the Union address. Safe to say, Canadian exporters are still largely uncertain about where they stand after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down tariffs. Ron Marcolin is VP with Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters here on the East Coast. Good to see you from Quispamsis tonight.
Thank you, Todd.
Look, I know it's been less than 24 hours, Ron, since the president addressed his tariff plan. Is there any more uncertainty among the folks you work with East Coast exporters about the state of the playing field?
In a word, no. It wasn't overly reassuring. Of course, there is, sort of these series of question marks, week to week, of course, day to day. And, even though we did have an issue, of course, last week that was positive, specific to the Supreme Court ruling, today's a new day and we still have uncertainty. And it's the uncertainty that really bothers our manufacturers and exporters in this part of the country and elsewhere.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about that. As some analysts, after the Supreme Court ruling, suggested, well, maybe this is good news for Canada. Others insist just the opposite. Does your organization have a position?
Yes, we do have a position, so it's sort of pro and con, to be honest. The pro is, yes, now we have the legal limits from the highest court in the land in the United States. That's a very positive thing. You can't, of course, take that away. That's, in essence, as I say, the legal limits, we know it. It's in print. We have all those details behind it leading up to and including that decision last Friday. The negative is, unfortunately, it really doesn't change too much. It is, as I say, another day. We do have a CUSMA review coming up in the summer that we're preparing for, and that the federal government, who obviously is a negotiator for all of us, is preparing for, and I think doing quite a good job. But back to the question, no, unfortunately, Atlantic Canadian manufacturers and exporters are in the same position they were a week ago.
You mentioned CUSMA. Is all of this just noise until those talks begin in earnest?
Yes, it is. And in fairness, you should take it as such, because the real issue is the review. And, when you do a review on a contract this size, an agreement this size, now, in fairness, it is trilateral. So it does include Mexico. It's not just with the United States and Canada. So obviously Mexico is involved and is a very important trading partner. Of course, as you know, Mark Carney and the team of 300-odd people and businesses, including some of our members in Atlantic Canada, went to Mexico and other, Mexico as a country and other locations within the country, and had a very good series of meetings recently. Back to your comment about, is it noise? It is, because that's the most important thing we have to deal with leading up to the summer negotiations around the review. We want, obviously, the review to pass. We want the review to continue to be free trade. But it's the uncertainty, unfortunately, that is leading up to that time that really bothers the manufacturers. As a business person, you can't really plan accordingly until you truly know what you're dealing with. And Canadians, manufacturing and exporting community, don't know what we're dealing with.
So how is that impacting business in terms of, are they sitting on money? Are they, how does this affect hiring, investing?
Well, interestingly enough, yes, the people that are sitting on money aren't necessarily the manufacturers. It's really the folks that are into, obviously, financing, for example, the expansion of plants or the lending of money to go into new machinery or a new line of business. Those things are very, very tenuous at the moment. It's unfortunate, but the Canadian business, for the most part, is sort of treading water, and that's not really a good thing to admit, but we're sort of waiting, and it has been waiting. We've been waiting for, obviously, months. In fact, we waited all through 2025. A lot of people may argue that is actually sort of the plan. That's sort of the modus operandi of President Trump, to catch you off guard all the time. He certainly has, and it's not exclusive to Canada. There's obviously a lot of countries in the world that are having the same issues.
Ron, when this all started out, there was a bit of talk of different companies across the country, but here in the Maritimes as well, whose ownership was saying, geez, we might have to look at moving to the U.S. Have those types of conversations largely died down, or is that still happening in the background?
Well, I think it's fair to say some manufacturers have always looked to go to different markets. And in regards to the United States, some manufacturers have gone to the United States. They have gone, but in fairness, for business reasons unrelated to Trump and tariffs. Were they going to go? You could make the argument yes, or they were at least considering going. But no, it really has died down again. We're sort of in a bit of a holding pattern. We certainly will be doing a lot of business with the United States. There's no doubt about it. Once we, get through this CUSMA review, they still will be a very big partner of ours. But a number of companies are, looking again at diversification, the balanced approach, which is very prudent, of course, in business to do that. And it does still include the U.S., but it's looking offshore as well.
Right, which is why the Prime Minister and his delegation are currently heading to India, as well as some other points to talk trade. Ron Marcolin, we always appreciate your insight on this. Thank you very much from the perspective of exporters.
Thank you for having me, Todd. Have a great evening.
You too. We'll take a break. Much more of your show still ahead.
February is Black History Month, recognizing Elm Hill. Elm Hill, New Brunswick, was founded in the early 1800s by free black families seeking opportunity and independence. It remains one of the province's oldest black settlements.
In Healthlines tonight, New Brunswick's new physical activity strategy. It's aimed to encourage people of all ages to get moving. CTV's Amanda Devison has more in the midweek edition of The Lifeline.
The province says the plan has 5 principles, which include supporting movement at every age and helping residents to build skills and motivation to be active. According to Statistics Canada, only half of New Brunswick adults get the minimum of 150 minutes of vigorous physical activity weekly. The province has launched a website with resources and tips to increase daily movement. Finally, healthcare advocates are in Ottawa pushing lawmakers to take action to reverse the rise in cervical cancer. It's the fastest growing type of cancer in the country, and experts say it's also almost completely preventable. The Women's Health Coalition of Canada is among the groups holding a news conference to push for better detection and prevention of cervical cancer. Most cases are caused by the human papillomavirus, or HPV, and there is a highly effective vaccine available. Canada has a goal of eliminating cervical cancer by 2040 by vaccinating 90% of kids under 18. Vaccination rates are at an average of 64%, and advocates say that needs to change. They're calling on provinces and territories to publicly fund the vaccine for adults and for lawmakers in Ottawa to create a national framework on women's health. With Health and Medical News, I'm Amanda Devison for The Lifeline.
In entertainment news, heated rivalry fans will have to wait a bit longer for the next chapter of the popular book series. Halifax-based author Rachel Reed says she's pushing back the release date of the upcoming installment. The next book will now be released in June of 2027 as Reed's Parkinson's symptoms have gotten worse.
And it's made it difficult physically to write, so I'm definitely a lot slower, and that's just something I need to learn how to navigate and kind of face instead of ignoring. And for all of these reasons, I've decided to move the publication date for Unrivaled to June 1st, 2027. I hope that's not too long a wait for everyone. I just needed a few more months for writing.
The new book, Unrivaled, is the 7th in the series. The books serve as the basis for the wildly popular Crave TV series Heated Rivalry, of course, which has become an international sensation. The upcoming book will continue the story of the relationship between hockey players Shane Hollander and Ilya Rozanov. The names are out of this year's candidates vying for induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This year's list is the largest ever, 17 artists. 10 of them are first-time nominees, including Lauryn Hill, Phil Collins, Wu-Tang Clan, Shakira, and the late Luther Vandross. The only artist to make the list in their first year of eligibility is Pink. Returning to the ballot once again, the Black Crowes and Billy Idol. Oasis also back on the list despite Liam Gallagher's issue with the Hall of Fame. Heavy metal band Iron Maiden is also returning for a third time. The inductees will be announced in April. Let's turn from rock and roll to TV. Here's what's on tonight. On the markets, the Dow Jones ended the trading day up just over 300 points. As expected, NVIDIA reported a blowout fourth quarter earnings report that hints the AI boom remains strong. BNN Bloomberg's Lindsay Biscaya with details.
NVIDIA cleared the high bar with fourth quarter results that beat estimates, as well as a strong outlook for the first quarter. The company's fiscal fourth quarter surged 73% from the previous year and reported profits that nearly doubled to roughly $43 billion. CEO Jensen Huang implied these results feed into his thesis that the AI boom is still in its early stages of a build-out. NVIDIA's stock price rose nearly 4% in extended trading after the results came out. Reuters is reporting OPEC Plus will likely consider raising its oil output for April. This will mark an end to a 3-month pause in production increases. And according to the report, the consideration might come as the group prepares for peak summer demand and tensions between the U.S. and OPEC member Iran boost prices. And shares of Loblaw fell sharply today, seeing its largest intraday drop since 2023. Fourth quarter revenue missed estimates and profit came in slightly above expectations. The results come as high inflation and rising cost of living have led consumers to tighten budgets and save money. And here are the closing numbers for the day. The Canadian dollar was up 10 cents to end the day. West Texas Intermediate dropped to 65.47. Western Canadian Select also down 50 cents to end the day. And the TSX closed on yet another new high, finishing above 34,000. Those are your business headlines. I'm Lindsay Biscaya.
Kellen, on the weather deck, one more look at the forecast.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. And the light snow that I've been talking about this evening, it's falling right now here in the north end of Halifax. Let's take a look at our viewer picture for tonight. And this is a beautiful sunrise shot coming in from Edna Trevors from Miramichi, New Brunswick. I want to thank Edna very much for taking the time to send that picture in. Miramichi for tomorrow can expect a fairly cloudy day. Highest chance of flurries will be in the morning, but there'll be a lower chance of flurries as well in the afternoon. The high temperature will be near 4 degrees. Day planner for tomorrow to start the day across the Maritime region, a mostly cloudy sky. Flurries will be most widespread in New Brunswick first thing in the morning, though with a chance of flurries as well in the southwest of Nova Scotia. The afternoon, the cloud cover should break up a little bit, the sun shining through. There will be a blustery west wind. Most high temperatures, though, in the Maritimes, though, get up to around the low to mid single digits. There will be a lower chance of a couple flurries drifting through in the afternoon, about a 30% chance for any given community. Todd.
Very good. See you tomorrow. Thank you, Caitlin. Finally for us tonight, could one of the most famous brand ambassadors in cleaning products, how many are there, be retiring? Mr. Clean says he's done, joining the Jolly Green Giant and the A&W Root Bear, among others. At least that's according to social media posts attributed to the cartoon mascot. Far from washed up, he says he's earned time off after more than 60 years of having a spotless record representing the brand. Procter & Gamble says packaging for Mr. Clean products will remain. Of course, this might just be a marketing gimmick. The company actually says the so-called retirement is tied to an upcoming announcement. shades of Mr. Peanut, perhaps. All right, that is our look at the day here at home. Bruce Frisco is here at 11:30 with the update. CTVNewsAtlantic.ca and the app have news anytime. I'm Todd Battis. Join us tomorrow. Good night.
CTV News, the Maritime's #1 newscast. Watch live on Crave.